you locked in right now. It's the Wheel1 podcast. Got a special guest in the cut. You know, got my friend Bentli here. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, I'm Bentli Blaze. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm glad they could actually, get this done. That means a lot. So,
I'm so sorry it's taken so long. I'm
nah.
so busy these days, and whenever it rains, it pours, so everything comes in full flux.
Literally and figuratively, it was just we just had thunderstorms up here. I know, we're gonna get into where you're from, soon enough, but it was a little crazy thing going on over here. But anyways, we usually like to get into it. How we do over here is we like to go like way back from the beginning, so as far back as you can think about. Like, tell me about the early life, family, where you grew up, where you come from, all that,
Okay, so I am from Amarillo, Texas. My family relocated here from South Texas before I was a year old, so this is really the only place that I've ever known. And I grew up here and went to school in Canyon. My dad is a veterinarian, so I was very blessed to grow up with wildlife and animals. And he is a well-known equine reproduction specialist. They do cloning and artificial insemination, and
shit.
He's a crazy mad scientist. So
I was just about to say that he's got a little bit of a mad scientist right there, but that sounds like an interesting upbringing.
That is him in a nutshell. And I have an older sister and two little brothers, and they all have kids. I'm an auntie, and my oldest sister has a daughter and a son, and then my brother that's closest to my age has a daughter and a son, and then my baby brother has a daughter.
Yeah, I know how that. I know. Sorry, I cut you off.
No worries. And then my mom was a housemaker, and she is one of my very best friends and one of the strongest forces in my life. So I had to make sure to throw in my mom too.
Of course, moms always need the love. Got to shout out moms all the time. They're always there, solid rock. So,
absolutely.
Tell me about that life, just growing up, that Texas life, just so because for most of my viewers, because with us living out here in Canada, and I just want to I'm just interested in just how it is growing up out there.
Well, I grew up in a very atypical manner anyway. It's not how most people do, but I was a tomboy, and there was a lot of fishing and hiking, and I grew up in a canyon. Our house is in the bottom of a bowl.
Seriously?
So it was really neat. Paladera Canyon is in Canyon, Texas, where I'm from, which is the second largest canyon in the United States. There's the Grand Canyon, and then Paladera Canyon in size is right after, and so it's our own little tiny canyon. And I grew up in Timber Creek, which is part of that, and we had all kinds of horses, and it was really a fun experience growing up in that area. And my parents still live out there, so it's one of my safe places. I love and enjoy going out to visit still. I mean,
that's one of the best things when your parents still kind of live in the place that you grew up in, because it's it's still my house anyways. I could always go back,
Exactly. Well, and I do laundry out there. So I'm out there at least a couple times a week.
I don't blame you. My laundry still gets done in my parents' house too. So it is what it is.
I moved out about 5 years post injury and got my own little place, and so I have my own little efficiency I stay in now, and it is an old garage that was converted into a 1-bedroom apartment, and it is just perfect for me, but there's no washer or dryer hookups or anything like that. So
it's the one con to everything, to all the pros, but you roll with the punches, like we were saying earlier.
I can handle not having a washer.
Exactly, that's the least of our worries sometimes. But so tell me more about just the hobbies and things that you guys did for fun when you were growing up, around in the canyon area. Yeah, I know.
Well, we all played sports. Me and my siblings. My sister's quite a bit older than us, so she graduated when I was 10, and but my brothers and I were always always getting into stuff. And we did a lot of fishing and outdoors type things and hunting. And we all played like basketball. I played football. My baby brother was really good at baseball. He played for college.
Oh. So, a couple questions there. What was your position in football?
What was mine?
Yeah.
A receiver.
Oh, okay. You were quick on the feet.
Flag football. So it was a long time ago. I didn't get to play very physical sports as I got older. These were my younger, like much younger days. I've had a pacemaker since I was 8, and so my family was scared to let me play really high contact sports and things like that, which is funny because as an adult, I was a mixed martial artist, and
you're like, fuck all that noise that you guys were talking about earlier.
Y'all are worried about me hurting myself in football. Like, just wait.
Exactly. So, leading into that, what were like some of it, like your passions that you had as a kid, like growing up, and like, do you still have some of them now?
I loved animals, and yes, I still do. Like, I showed horses and was in 4-H. I did like cutting and barrels, showmanship, Western showmanship, was like jumping. I did English and Western, but my passion when I was younger was definitely horses.
Oh, so like what kind of drawn you into like the horses, especially like why you just had such a love for them?
My dad.
Of course, the mad scientist veterinarian.
Mm-hmm. Around all the horses, so
I mean,
kind of comes with it.
I like me personally. I'm like scared shitless of horses because like I'm not a small dude, but like they were just always just like, oh, I feel like they're just too big and God only knows what's gonna happen, and like my anxiety would just go through.
If you're hearing whining, my dog is being a bit quick.
No, it's okay.
She gets weirded out when I do my podcast and I'm talking. She thinks I'm talking to myself or something, I guess, and so you'll hear a little faint.
She's just checking up on you. She's just checking out.
I apologize. She'll probably come. Yeah, she's gonna come say hello. But this is Bella. She is my 95-pound Doberman. Go down. Go. She's a big girl.
She's a big girl.
She's a big girl. She's my size. She takes up as much room as I do in the bed. That's for sure. And she only weighs about 30 pounds less than I do.
So she's up there. She's up there. But she brings all the love, and she's trying to make sure you're good all the time. So that's why she was just checking in. She's like, all right, making sure that everything's good. I'll do my own thing now.
Yep.
Now, now that we kind of got into more about the upbringing stuff, I kind of want to know about how your views on someone on society are, as just a woman that lives in Texas is where you do, and then as being a disabled woman at that.
The disability is not the hard part, honestly. As you can tell, I don't look like a typical person in general. I also have very different views. I live in the Bible Belt. So I grew up in a very conservative, very Christian, very strict kind of environment, and being a little rebel and being someone that views the world quite differently, it has been a challenge. But my disability has not hindered anything in my life in this vicinity particularly. And I'm very blessed. I have a lot of people that just take care of me and go above and beyond to accommodate my disability, particularly my school. I go to WT A&MU here locally. It's the sister school of A&M.
Okay, shout out.
And I returned to school in the fall. It was my first semester back. I graduated in 2019 with my associates in horticulture science. I went back to school when I was 30 and paralyzed. So it was a culture shock initially, to say the very least. But everyone embraced me and made everything that I was insecure about, nobody made me feel that way. So that was a nice change of pace. And I started going, for cannabis initially. Like when I went back to school, this was like right when I moved into my apartment, is the same timeline. I went to the gating program at Craig Hospital in January to about March in 2018. And I lived up there by myself for about 8 weeks. And so that kind of opened my eyes to everything. Like, okay, I keep in mind, I did stay in like a hospital apartment. So everything was
accommodated for,
customized to be functional for me and everything. But I had my own vehicle and I explored Denver and just, I'm like, I can do this, because they originally, don't think that you can live independently, like the vast majority of us anyway. That's not like usually what happens. And I was like, I can do this. And one of my physical therapists really encouraged me to go back to school. And I'm like, I'm sorry, be quiet, stop. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. It happens. My neighbor's dogs are barking right now, so it's all good.
So, one of my physical therapists really encouraged that, and I'm like, I'm 30, I am like too old to do this, I've been through too much, like this is just,
that's not old at all.
Going to school's not in my cards kind of mentality. And I did go to school off and on before I was injured, and I went to school for physical education, and I get certified to be a group fitness instructor as well as a personal trainer. And so I was like, well, I don't have to finish. I'm already getting paid to do what I'm wanting to do. And so I did have a significant amount of credits already. And I was trying to move up to Denver after I went to rehabilitation, the gating program, and that department fell through, and I was just devastated. And I was like, okay, well, which in hindsight, I'm glad it did. Everything happened as it was supposed to.
Everything happens for a reason.
I randomly went up to Amarillo College and was like, okay, let's see what kind of classes I'd have to take to finish this degree. And unfortunately, they didn't have the physical education degree plan anymore. And so I was just going to go ahead and finish my general studies. And I, was like, all right, I'll start taking classes. And I went up there at the beginning of March, and in like a week started taking the intercession classes, the 8-week classes. And I was encouraged by one of my teachers, which he ended up being one of my biology teachers later, but he was teaching professional management skills essentially as this class I had to take. And he was mentioning that they were starting the horticulture program in the fall and really pushed me to go to that. And I was like, okay, and I want to be a part of the cannabis industry. I really have a big inclination to support medicinal treats and things like that. I'd like a nonprofit eventually to where terminal and disabled patients get their medicine for free. So that was what brought me to that program. I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll have a degree about plants and things, and that will help me in the long run, regardless of whatever. That's a good entryway. And I started taking classes, and I was in the first horticulture class at Amarillo College and was doing the program. And I started learning and educating myself on the field, and I just fell in love with agriculture. I had to take an agronomy class, which I didn't even know that was a thing.
Explain that to the people who like the rest of us who don't know what that is.
Agronomy is the study of agriculture.
Okay, all right. Very simple, as much as it sounds, as complicated as it sounds.
Like very complex, and it would, but it's literally agriculture, agronomy. So I know I did the same thing, so it's completely understandable. And it kind of snowballed from there. I fell in love with agriculture, and then I had a botany teacher that made me fall in love with plants, like even more so, not just cannabis. You know?
I mean, even though that's a beautiful plant,
right? And I also just absolutely fell in love with chemistry, which I did not anticipate in the least bit. And
really, even being a scientist's daughter.
Well, fuck, I've been a degenerate. Like, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna get to at some point. You know, like I got court ordered to get my GED when I was 16.
Oh.
And so that is very. So since I was so young, whenever I was like forced to leave school, I had never taken chemistry or physics or anything like that, and so of course I did have to take introductory chemistry and then Chem 1 and Chem 2. And it challenged me, and I actually did really well, and it's really benefited me as a senior in my university, having the chemistry background and a little bit better understanding of all of those things, and having the applicable knowledge for my future classes. It was huge, and I don't know how familiar you are with chemistry, but it's very difficult.
Not at all. Not at all. Science was not one of my good subjects in school.
So it just opened my eyes to so much, and I was actually the president of the STEM club a semester while I was at Amarillo College, and they just kind of let me do what I want with the equipment and the machines, and I got to play with like all the different experiments, and it was just I was getting to do already senior level things with my like freshman and sophomore classes, so it was pretty cool.
I mean, I can imagine how like amazing that would be from going to a couple months before that thinking, oh, I can't do this, like, you know, I'm too old for this.
I'm in charge of things, and you know, I have struggled with substance abuse on and off my entire life. And at that juncture, I was still drinking and partying and things like that. But I maintained a good GPA. I'd never made the dean's list. And so I made all A's and B's, and was just having a heyday. And my best friend passed away in December of 2018.
Sorry to hear that.
Sadly, she didn't get to see me graduate. I graduated a year after her passing. And
sorry to hear that.
After she passed, I just went off the rails, and I did not handle it well, to put it lightly. And I really dove down deep into my addictions. Like, I was just trying to fill a void with booze and blow and booty calls, which is not attainable.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a deeper hole that you're creating there.
Yeah, and so I managed to get through the last few classes that I had. I don't know how, but after I finished, I graduated in December of 2019. Well, then the pandemic happened shortly after that, and I hadn't planned on going to school at that juncture anyway, but it really put a damper on everything in general. But for my school, like I had no inclination to keep going. I was like, I got my degree. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I quit drinking in November of 2020. So I've been sober a little over a year and a half. And
shout out to you for that.
Drugs and all of the things. And so last summer, I was painting full time. I also just decided to be an artist one day in the midst of my sobriety, and it took off, and I was very successful very quickly in those endeavors. And I had to figure out, like, I vastly underestimated how much time and energy I put into partying and like my debauchery and other things. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I woke up one morning in July and was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to school. Yeah. And I went to Canyon, and I filled out all my FAFSA, and I registered for classes, and in August I started going to school again, and I'm absolutely thriving. Since August, I've completed 30 hours worth of classes, And I made straight A's. I made the president's list last semester and this one.
Oh, shout out to you again for that. You know, those are big things.
I was a part of the agronomy club.
It's soon to be president. Soon to be president. You know, who knows?
I don't want to do that again, but it was fun. You know,
it was fun while it lasted.
I like being involved with the philanthropy and things like that, but I'm very different, and I don't go and be a part of things that I'm not celebrated anymore. And if that makes any sense, no one's ever made me feel less than or anything like that, but it's a bunch of young 20-year-old cowboys and cowgirls, like, essentially, that are my peers. And that's great, and that's fine and dandy and wonderful, but I don't fit that demographic.
I can only imagine, because it's like, you know, even what you're saying, like growing up and like living in the Bible Belt, and this, like, literally just the way you look. I'm pretty sure it's just like, you know, some people it's just like, ooh, interesting, because like you just stand up.
We deadass have a steak store in my school. Like, it's like the biggest meat lab in the United States. Apparently, I unbeknownst to me, I didn't know all of these things until I was there. But yeah, we have a store where you can go in and buy steaks at the ag building. Like, that's how country we are.
I mean,
clearly, I don't look very country. I am, and that's what's very funny is like
it's the country in the heart. It's never judge a book by its cover. As much as you don't look country, you still got it in you. You know, that's the thing.
And I am, and like, you know, I'm very country, and that's what's so hilarious to me. And I'm also a lot older than everybody, but I look young.
Yeah, of course. Don't worry. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people didn't even realize that. You had to tell them.
They don't. No, and especially because I do have such a youthful aesthetic. Youthful aesthetic. Words are hard today.
It's all good. It's all good.
But that helps, you know. I'm not treated like I'm a geriatric student for the most part. And it actually has been very helpful because I have such a great rapport with all of my mentors and all of the instructors and heads of the department and things. And because I am older, I think I get more of a treatment as an equal instead of as a student.
Yeah.
And I have so much life experience that it really has worked out in my benefit entirely. Like, every struggle and strife I've had has helped me.
And, you know, speaking of that, like, I kind of want to roll that into, like, my next question, which is, like, usually, you know, with everyone on the podcast, mental health is always a big thing for me on the podcast, especially with, like, you know, having the spinal cord injury, and, like, usually I ask people about, like, a traumatic incident that they've had that made them, like, think about their mental health. And for me, I think one question that's simple, you know, since you have a spinal cord injury, and obviously you weren't born with one, how did that happen?
I got shot in 2013.
Sorry to hear that. I got shot too. So, you know we're in the same club, kind of. You know what I'm saying? We just too strong like that. We just hug them, you know. I'm fucking around, but
when people don't realize how common that actually is. And like, I love and respect that we can understand each other and empathize on that level.
Yeah.
But most people just assume you were in a car wreck. Like, that's
True.
The typical understanding. Like, when was your car wreck? I'm like, I got shot, actually.
And then it's like the look that everyone gives you. It's like whoa.
I was just about to say, you know, like, you live it. It's your life, so it's not as traumatizing to speak of it, at least at this juncture, anymore. And the shock factor in you just answering what happened to you, like, people treat you like a leper. You know, you're just like, ask the question. If you can't handle my answer, don't ask the question.
Especially because, like, then usually they ask the question and it's like a whole bunch of follow-up questions, like, oh, so what happened? What were you doing?
What were you doing?
I hate that fucking question. I hate that question. Like, what the fuck you mean, what was I doing? Like, do I have to be doing something?
Yeah, it's, you know, I do know, like, so my boyfriend at the time is who shot me.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah,
fuck that guy.
So it wasn't random. It was fucking random. But it wasn't, like, I wasn't an innocent victim circumstance per se, and I did absolutely own my own part in what happened to me.
Okay.
But I never should have been shot nor deserved to. And
yeah, of course not.
It is just disgusting how people just are so insensitive about such a traumatic thing, if that makes any sense.
Oh, no, I trust me, I definitely know it. Like, it happens to me on a daily basis. I tell my girlfriend this, like, sometimes I'd leave my house and someone will just look at me and like, what's wrong with your legs? And it's like,
well, nothing's wrong with my legs.
Exactly. It's like, you know, well, actually, so like, you got to get to the whole story. And
spinal cord.
Yeah, you know, got a little situation that happened there, and it's just like, people can be very insensitive because people don't realize like the things that they say, or sometimes it's like how they say them.
How they say it, and I'm very weird about wording anyway, and I've had to work on that. That's clearly one of my triggers, and I have really put in a lot of work. I was a very angry, mean person for the vast majority of my injury, like post-injury.
Yeah. This stereotypical like mean person in the wheelchair. Which is like, it's like, I hate to say that because like I feel like that's like as an able-bodied person, that's what like I assumed, and then when I got into the chair, it's like that would piss me off.
I get why you're a dick.
It was that, and then it would piss me off where people like, I've even had people like when I've yelled at people for like driving on a ramp and just like parking there like it's a fucking parking space.
I used to be like very big on getting everybody that is doing every kind of thing and like taking it upon myself as like a personal vendetta to make sure, and like I still do those things, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to let go.
Yeah,
ignorance is really rampant.
Very true.
Unfortunately,
because I've definitely felt like I wanted to like fucking throw shit at people. Literally, like I've literally had that feeling where it's like I just want to throw shit at this person right now because why are you acting like this? You know, it's ridiculous. But
I also realized my shortcomings pre-injury. Like, I did a lot of the things that other people do because I didn't know better.
Yeah, very true, very true. I mean, this is the same for me. Like, you know, I feel like I was like somewhat lucky where it's like I had a past relationship where an ex-girlfriend of mine, she had a son that he was in a wheelchair, but he had like some sort of nerve issue. So it's like I've seen a person like live the life of a person that had to like, you know, be a wheelchair user, and it may give me somewhat of an understanding. But then when I got into the chair, it was like
it's completely different.
Yeah, it was like this kid is so strong because he was like, when I first met him, he was like probably like 7 years old, and I was like, this kid is fucking strong because like he was so full of life, and this shit is hard as fuck. But oh man, that's just But like, let's talk more about how you kind of like when you got into the chair and like, you know, how that affected your mental health and like kind of like how you used the negative and kind of turned into a positive.
I didn't for a very long time. Like most of the vast majority of the healing as far as my mental health goes and my spirituality and my emotional intelligence has grown immensely as well. But for the first 5 years of my injury, I was heavily medicated. And I now am prescription free. I don't take any kinds of pharmaceuticals. I have a sleeping aid, which I don't count as a pharmaceutical. But I was on 40 to 50 pills every single day.
Shit.
And so I wasn't living. I was just existing. And I was in a state of being zombified for so long. And I don't know really what drove me, but something did to get off of those pills. And I did. It took a year and a half of weaning, like slowly, and it was excruciating and it was terrible. And
I know the feeling.
Something I recommend for someone to go into lightheartedly. It is something you have to want entirely.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that you're going to hurt, particularly physically, like
for
the entire duration of that. that time.
Yeah.
But you are also like, it's the worst mental struggle I've ever really experienced, besides extensive grief. And it's just, you start getting clearer and clearer and start feeling things that you have been numb to for so long. And it just, you know, you're like, wow, I'm awake after all of this time. And I, you know, also was 25 when I was injured, and it's like I just woke up when I was 30. And even now, I'm about to be 35, and I'm in a perpetual state of being a 25-year-old girl. Like,
I mean, I kind of know what you mean, because, like, for me, I got hurt when I was 23. So it's, like, very similar, where it's like, and now I'm 28 now. So it's just like, it's in this weird state where it's like, I still feel like I'm kind of like you said, like, still kind of like young when I was back then.
But you're wise. Like, you're eternally youthful, but fucking still geriatric.
Exactly. It's
such a conundrum. Like,
it just fucks with me
so
sometimes.
Young in my heart, but I know so much more now. Like,
I've seen a whole different side of life that I think, like, you know, I'll make 30 years or 40 years too soon. But, you know, it is what it is. We get through it.
Exactly. And even with, like, my attractions, and it was so weird, you know, I was completely celibate, and I didn't drink alcohol, but I was abusing opioids and things, like, so I don't consider this part of my journey sober. But for the first 4 almost half years, I didn't drink alcohol after injury. And then I also, like, because it was my boyfriend, I had severe intimacy issues, which I still am working on. But
I mean, I could only imagine. Like, that's like, you know, you went through a pretty fucked up situation.
And so I didn't let anyone even so much as touch me, like, for many years. And then I moved out on my own again, and it was like being 18 years old all over again. And I would, like, started partying and all of the things, and like even the people I was attracted to were much younger. Like, I had never been into younger people, and then all of a sudden I had a bunch of snack packs. Like, everybody was like 10 plus years younger than me, and it was like a weird transition. Like,
it happens though, you know. Like, you know, I was a young guy that used to go for the older women myself, so, you know, I know how it could be sometimes.
So I'm the baby cougar in training now, apparently. Like, how the roles have reversed. Like, and, you know, I had never been with anyone younger ever. And then when I was 30, I started seeing a 21-year-old guy. And that was just crazy. And we're still very close, and we're friends. But he's too old to be a snack pack now.
Well, you know, that at least it's just crazy how, like, you kind of like the growth that happens with it, though, because it's just like at one point, you know, you just like thinking, I can't do this, and, like, you know, taking a while just to get back into the whole intimacy thing in general. And then I can imagine how it was different just being intimate now as a disabled woman, because, like, you know, I know the differences being a disabled man. It's a whole different thing.
Well, and that's, like, the thing too, is, like, I went through a super hoe phase after my friend fucking passed away. Like, I'll be candid, it's fine.
It happens. We all do it. As
I told you, it was like just a sea of fucking drinking and drugs and dick, and all of that comes along with it. Like, and I, even just recently, so after injury, I did not even attempt to experience intimacy sober. There's not one time I have interacted with somebody that I wasn't inebriated. And so I got sober, and I was celibate for a little over a year. I have been with one person one time, which was a very weird situation, but it was so different mentally, and especially going into it, you know. And whenever you only experience physical things in an altered state of mind, and then going into it, like, not, you're just like,
everything's
okay,
weird
this
now.
Is different.
Yeah, I could imagine, just because, like, I've had a friend of mine on the podcast earlier, and she's like, she has a spinal injury, And she was just talking about that's how different it is in general, just because it's like the littlest things of where it's like she noticed like, well, shit, I might just fucking piss myself if things get intimate like that, just because, you know, her bladder situations is a little different, and there's all these other things. So I can just imagine where you now, where it's just like you're going through the stage where it's like you're kind of getting over like intimacy. Fuck. Yeah, I'm having trouble with words.
Words are hard today.
Yeah, you know, it happens. But like, you know, where it's like you're having these like intimacy issues, and then like being intimate, and then not being like sober while doing it, and then now like being sober while doing it. It's like almost like 3-4 transitions going on at one time.
Oh, everything I'm doing is different entirely, and it's been a struggle creating this normalcy based around health and wellness instead of just numbing. And I have used drugs and drinking as a crutch for so long. You know, since I was a teenager, and I have gotten clean and all of these things many times over the years. And I've never been this healthy, nor have had this much clarity ever in my life. And so everything is whimsical and new, and all of everything that I'm experiencing is stuff I actively tried to avoid for so long. And then throwing in the disability in that is even more bizarre. And I do things so different, and I've noticed particularly, you know, I do a lot of things that most people in our disabled community don't do, as far as just living like I'm not in a wheelchair.
Little technical difficulties, you know, but we're back at it. So, you know, if you could just kind of like jump back into like, you know, how you're talking about just like, you know, the whole after effects of the transition of like, you know, now like, you know, being like the dating life of being, you know, having the spinal cord injury, and this even like the area you like you live in too, because like you said, you know, Bible Belt kind of like situation going on over there, and then it's like with you, like, yeah, still like, let's like get more into that again.
Those are vague. Can you be more specific?
Like, what's been like the most difficult thing that you've experienced since like, you know, with after having the injury and like with getting back into the dating life, aside from like obviously the intimacy issues?
Well, that's like the thing with me is I don't date, like, okay. Per se. Like, I was ethically non-monogamous. Is like,
I feel that it's a polyamorous thing. I get that.
No, because it wasn't about love. Like, I was just trying to get dick down. Like, but I was like completely honest about it. Like, you know, I was putting the hoe in honest. Like, you know, like
I just fucking hit myself in the face. That was hilarious.
I'm just saying, like...
No, I totally get it. I think we've all had that phase in life where it's like, it's just about the physical right now. I'm not really trying to get too deep into everything else.
But I've always been that way. Like, I've only ever had 2 boyfriends, and one of them tried to kill me, so understandably...
I can see why, you know, yeah.
And, so, like, the actual... And I say that loosely, like, I was not ever in exclusive relationships or dated or anything like that. Like, I got taken out and pampered and things like that.
Of course.
And had, like, customers and dinner daddies and things. So it wasn't like I didn't date, like, go on dates, but I don't date. So.
No, I totally get what you mean. I think that's, like, what most people are right now in this day and age, where it's just kind of like, you're kind of just doing your thing. And, like, whoever rocks with you is rocking with you at the same time.
Yes, well, and I'm also pansexual, so, like, I am fluid. I go back and forth between things that I want in life. And, like, if I dig it, I'll keep doing it.
I feel like that's, like, you know, a quote for the day. Like, you know, so if you like it, just keep doing it. Like, you know.
Essentially, that's how I roll.
No pun intended, you know. No pun intended.
Maybe a little.
Okay. Now, like, now that, like, one thing that kind of intrigued me about you, made one interview, is just your look in general now, I'm obviously I'm a lover of tattoos, and you're covered in them as the collector that you are. What started the love, and what made you just say, fuck it, I'm going all out with it?
You know, my first tattoo was actually, and it's covered now, which it is funny because it's starting to show through. It's been 10 years. I need to get it touched up again. But it's a tribal tramp stamp. Oh,
wow. And
that's how old I am.
I didn't want to say it like that. Like,
it's fine. It's the facts. But it was a tribal tramp stamp, and for my first boyfriend, I had a horrible toxic relationship with that too. And during that breakup, I'm like, if I can go through this tattoo, I can go through any of this bullshit. Like, I'm a strong, independent woman type thing. Like,
I mean, you know, and the lower back area is pretty spicy.
And it really wasn't bad for me. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. And my best friend that I mentioned that passed away was a tattoo artist. Oh. And she worked at the shop where I got my first tattoo, and she did my second tattoo, and then tattooed me many, many times after that. And I was 19 going in there and became really, really good friends with her. And so she is who really just nurtured my love for tattoo and art in general.
I mean, I think that's kind of amazing when you look back on it, because it's like, as sad as it is that, you know, she's not here right now, it's like you can look back on, like, just on your body and have that remembrance of, like, oh man, look at all these good times that we had, you know.
And we had such a fun time, and like I was a stripper back in the day. Also, imagine that. And it was really brief, like actually working in clubs. I did more like bachelor parties and things like that. But she's the one who encouraged me to do that. Like, she had another client that was like the baddest bitch in Amarillo. She's still a bad bitch, but she's in Cali and stuff now. And she was all sleeved out and had big old fake titties, and it was just so cool. And like, you know, Kelly is my friend that passed. She introduced me to Nina, and Nina kind of showed me the game, and that's like how this whole persona and everything was born. Nina owned a clothing line called Toxic Kitten, and so I'm one of the original OG kittens.
Okay. And, you gotta let them know. OG, you know, OG in the cut.
OG kitten up in here. Yeah. And so it's it grew from that. We had like stripper Tuesdays like all the time, and so like me and two of my homegirls like that were dancers then, who are now like moms and grandmas and nurses and career women and like boss bitches. Like, I want to elaborate that like I love my sex workers, and I have so many friends and people that I love and adore like over the years that either A, still work in the club, or B, like worked in the club and are now like fucking lawyers and doctors and shit. Like, I love all of the degenerates. Like, these are my people.
I feel like those are sometimes are like the best of people, because of the people who try to
they are. Like, it's not even sometimes. Like, it's, you know, I love people that are judged by the vast majority of other people, because these other people haven't been through anything. They haven't been put in the situations that these other people have been through and lived through. And life has a way of humbling people that look down on other people. And so
that is a true fact. Like, you know, it's like, it's kind of crazy that you say that, because like I even think about like with my whole experience in life, and it's like, of course the spinal cord injury humbled me, but then it made me like really like have so much more empathy for the people, like you said, who just get judged on a regular basis. Because like,
yeah, not even just other, and that's like, for me personally, I'm an inclusivity advocate. I want everybody to be included, not just able bodies, not even just disabled bodies. Exactly. Like, whether you can't hear, whether you can't see, if you're vertically challenged, if you're an amputee, like any kind.
There's so much more
than difference. I want to be a part of my world.
Exactly. I feel like that's a good thing, because like you get so many like aspects and like different views on life, just because everyone's going through something different. Like even like me and you, we both got shot and we're both in a wheelchair. Our life experiences with that is still very different. Like, you know, and like that's like the beauty of everything.
And being a male and being a female, like there's a lot of different variations, and no two spinal cord injuries are the same.
Exactly. Like, even if they're the exact same spinal cord injury.
I'm like, I don't know what level injury. Like, I'm an L2, partial L3, incomplete.
I'm like T3, T4 incomplete.
Yeah, so you're way higher than me.
Exactly. I'm like, I always tell people waist down because I don't want to get the full depth of like, it's actually like nipple down, but like, you know.
And that's like, I never thought, so I have a TikTok account now, which I never fucking thought I'd do, but I was encouraged, and I have a pretty decent following and things like that now, and that's the biggest thing I do is defend how paralyzed I am. Like,
which is like the craziest thing.
Completely floored, you know, like, oh, I saw your leg move, you're faking it, you're lying, blah, 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 blah.
It's like,
oh my gosh.
People are so ignorant to that fact, 'cause I think about it too, when it's like even like my friends, I love them. But then sometimes like I would be in my chair and I'm like, you know, I'm sitting in this too much, and I just stretch out a little bit, and I get a spasm, and my leg kicks in the air, and they're like, "Bro, you can do this?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just a spasm, but I'm not doing this." Exactly. People think you're walking, and you're perfectly fine. Like, forget all the internal like things that are going on with you. Like, you're walking, you're good. Like it's like kind of crazy because like even me, like I said, I have the T4, T4 on T4 area, and it's like I could still kind of move my hips a little bit. Like I got like that little motion back, and even that I think people would be like, "What? What do you mean you can move your hips? I thought you were like paralyzed." So it's like I could get what you mean for you, where it's like I'm pretty sure you can move a leg.
Well, it's like just little things like so. And I'm very mobile. I'm a very high function injury now. Like when I was first injured, I was essentially quadriplegic, and I have gained all of the mobility and things that I have now. But and especially when I was drinking and things like that, I always go get up into the bar stool. Like anyway, like I transfer into the bar stool even now. Like I just left a bar celebration for an anniversary. Like I sit up in the bar stool. I like to be high level with everybody. You get tired of talking to people like that.
Trust me.
Like, and so I used to go to this restaurant, and there was a guy that bartended there, and I did that. Like I'd get up in the chair, and he would tell, and I was friends with the other employees, so the message got relayed back to me. But the guy was like, "Oh, she's just faking it, blah, 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 blah. Like, she gets up in the bar stool." I'm like, you literally watched me lift myself up with just my arms. Like, I didn't get up out of my chair and walk to the fucking stool. Like,
that's just
you are an idiot.
It's the ignorance of things. Like, you think, like, I didn't go to rehab or some shit? Like this is, like, I just...
parking.
It's like that's just the thing about it. Like it's crazy how you like actually have to defend yourself on things like that. Like when it's just like you're just trying to more educate people, and it's like it's turned into like it's a defense now, where it's like
I'm creating awareness, y'all.
It's like clearly, obviously, you don't see wheelchair people enough. So this is why I'm letting you know that we are all different. Some of us can walk, but still use the chair. Like little shit like that, but. You know, people could be ignorant, and that's just gotta chalk it up to that sometimes. Like you said, we can't fight every battle.
But I do put my time and energy into the injustices that I feel necessary, and that's what's important.
Exactly. I feel that's the best thing. So, like, kind of like rolling into that, like, you know, what are you like? What are some things that you're currently doing for yourself? Like, you know, that we kind of talked about, like, you know, the TikToking. The painting, like, you know, what are some other things that you're currently doing for yourself?
Doing for myself, like in general.
In general, like healing, you know, in general, but everything you can add that into it too, because the healing's a big part about it too. You know, mental and physical.
I travel a lot. I go to tattoo conventions pretty readily.
I always wanted to go to one. I've never been to one yet.
I'm going to 2 in June. I've got one in Houston. the first weekend of June, and then the second weekend of June, I go to Oklahoma City. Both of those are the Villain Arts. And I'm a part of the Carnival of Ink family. Oh. I'm actually a talent scout. And
shit.
I went in March to go to that, and I'll go to the Lake of Ozarks in September. My school schedule is kind of depleted going to the other two, but that's like my favorite. Like my little family is there. And are you familiar with human suspension?
Yes, because I watch a whole lot of videos about tattoo conventions, so I see them all the time, and I'm just like, how the fuck do these people do this?
Well, I'm doing it in Oklahoma City.
How do you do that? Like, especially as a now as a person in the wheelchair, like, how do you do that?
I found a team that I absolutely love, adore, and trust, and I've wanted to do this since pre-injury, and so I'm going to do it. We're going to, if it changes up, I'm comfortable with that, but the needles will go in my back. It'll be 2 spots in my back, and I'll suspend from my shoulders. And I have more nerve in my right side than I do in my left. Mm-hmm. And so a good friend of mine is also coming, and she does shibari. Are you familiar with that?
No, let us know, because I don't know. So
it's like a fetish tying thing. I'm sure you've seen it, and you didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
tied up with rope.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I was just like, what? I'm like, why are they getting tied up like that?
It was called, like, yeah. So she does shibari, and she's gonna tie my legs in a really neat shibari design. Oh. And so I'm gonna look more like a little mermaid instead of a dead fucking worm on a hook, like how I was like. I'm irrationally fearing out. I'm like, I want to swing. I don't just want to hang there.
Yeah, because like, do you still have like the hip movements to kind of like help you swing a little?
Yes,
okay,
I
all right. Do. Okay, that's good. All right, so then you'll be good. You'll be looking like the mermaid that you should be looking like.
That's what I'm hoping for, and it's gonna be a beautiful experience. It's one of the most amazing energy exchanges I've ever felt. Like I've watched many other people go up for their first time, and it's amazing. And I'm very hypersensitive to energies anyway, and so it's going to be just a beautiful experience. I'm not nervous about like the pain or the actual piercings and things like that. What I'm anxious about is going to be the crowd, because it's going to be in front of a lot of people.
Really? I would think that, like, you seem like an outgoing person that wouldn't have like that issue with like just being in front of a crowd of people like that.
It's not just being in front of a crowd, in front of a bunch of people. Like, that is not the issue. Like, absolutely, that I'm not worried about. But having all of that attention focused on you and it being a big deal. Like, I'm a paraplegic experiencing this body suspension. I personally have never, ever.
I think this will be a first. Like I think this will be a first.
And the No Gimmicks Needed team, I absolutely love and adore Sean and Frankie and talking about this. Like, I've been building this up for like the last year.
I mean,
a couple months ago, I was like, I'm doing this, but he had mentioned that he had done this with a little person who used a wheelchair, and I'm like, it's not the same, but and so I really like thought long and hard about it, and like the logistics of it, and I want to do this. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be beautiful. I'm going to come up out of my chair. So
it's going to look great. It's going to look like you're almost like you're floating out of like the water.
I pulled up out of my wheelchair, and
it's going to be amazing.
Like, I keep having this mental image of getting like an underdog or something, like. So.
Oh man, I think it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a first. It's gonna be.
Keep your eye out, 'cause it's coming out.
Oh no! Like I said, I watch these like I'm on YouTube, but every time I'm like searching up just tattoo conventions in general, just to see things. Like I love the art,
like, but and I have like sneaky suspicion this is gonna like blow up.
Oh, definitely. So. Like I said, it's a paraplegic woman turning into a mermaid. Like, how does that not go viral?
Yeah, it's dope. So, that's what I have coming up in like a couple of weeks. And then like, I'm going to Boston for my first time in July, and I'll get to go like Salem and experience all that. And I go back to school in August, and I am going for the abroad program. I get to go to South Africa.
Oh shit! You're going all over the place. You know, like I think that's like one of my fears, like subconsciously, and a little like one of my insecurities is like traveling, because I'm like, I don't want to go on a plane and then like fuck up my chair. Then like now I'm
those are all very valid fears, and that's a lot of things that I worry about. But I have trust in the universe, and I'm not gonna stop living because of my limitations.
Real
and shit. So I roll with it, like, again, like, little pun intended, but that's what I do, and I travel by myself the vast majority of the time, too. Like, all of these tattoo conventions and things I go to, I road trip by myself.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, like, I'm an independent person, too, like, in the chair, like, you know, I live in my own apartment and stuff like that as well. So it's like, when I would even just tell other people, like, West Water countries that, they're just looking at me like, whoa, like, you know? So it's like, for me to hear you're just, like, doing all this stuff that I think myself, I'm, like, you know, as independent as I am, I'm still insecure about, because it's like, ugh, like, you know?
How long have you been injured?
I'm going on 5 years now, so I'm still a baby in this.
You're still very, and, like, as much as, like, the complex of time, like, really is subjective as well, I don't care who you are, it takes about 5 years into your spinal cord injury before you even, like, get acclimated to even thinking it as a normalcy.
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah, definitely. Really. Because, like, for me, I'd say the first 2 years was just dealing with the disbelief, shock, grief, and, like, all these emotions kind of going at once.
Well, and all the physical and occupational therapy and things like...
And just being in pain all the time, and, like...
You're in survival mode for the first 5 years. Like, I don't care who you are, and especially if you are on heavy medications or, you know, like, everybody's spinal cord injury is traumatic, no matter who you are. Mm-hmm. But whenever you are afflicted with a gunshot wound and things like that, you have issues that people can't even comprehend having to cope with. Yeah. And that's on top of having to deal with the physical bullshit of having a spinal cord injury.
Yeah, like, that's the truth. Because, like, I even remember when I was at rehab, like, my nurses and, like, my physios, they'd always make a joke about how, like, I would only go to the gym, back to my room, and, like, I wouldn't even go down my wing. Like, I didn't go down there for, like, the first, like, 2.5 months that I was there, because I'm like, I don't want to talk to nobody. Like, I just got shot.
I don't want to be a part of that, like, group, like, mentality, and, like, as shitty as that is me to say, like, this is my community, and I have embraced it wholeheartedly, entirely, but at the beginning of my injury, I don't want to be around a bunch of other fucking hurt people, like,
yeah, and it was
my mentality.
It was that for me, too, and then on top of it, it was, like, because for me, I don't know who shot me, so it was, like, I don't know who shot me. I don't want to be around you people who I don't know. And, like now it's, like, that's, like, where, like, my anxiety.
That's completely understandable psychologically. And also, like, I had a fucking grandiosity complex myself. I'm like, well, you have not been through what I have been through type thing.
I used to do that a lot.
And that's not true. And also, it doesn't matter how traumatic your experience was in comparison. Everybody's trauma is valid and it is equal. It doesn't matter if what I went through may have been more horrific. If somebody goes through a trauma that has psychologically made them imbalanced, it is the same.
Yeah, like, one thing I used to tell people a lot, just from, like, going through a lot of, like, group therapies and stuff like that, and you meet all these other different people, and I would meet some people where it's like, I've met one man, I think he, like, slipped and fell on ice, and he, like, broke his neck, and he's, like, paralyzed from the neck down. He needs, like, help with everything. And, like, to move his chair, like, he, like, breathes through, like, this almost, like, tube type thing. And it was just crazy to see that.
Little sensors, like, and then you start, like, seeing people who comparatively are worse physically, and you're like, okay, my situation is not as bad as I am making it out to be.
Exactly.
Like, this is completely my mindset at this juncture. But you have to go through those struggles and being a brat and being mad and all of the things. You have to go through that in order to get through to be on to that journey of healing and self-discovery. And getting acclimated to the real world as a disabled person is fucking difficult. And it doesn't matter who you are. I am blessed to be very aggressive and have a big enough voice to be heard. And I demand respect. And I demand to be treated as an equal. And that's why I'm so big in the inclusivity of advocacy. I know, and I have so many friends that just accept things for as they are. And I'm a person that is going to make sure there's change. Like, I might be suffering and I might have to go through a bunch of bullshit to make something at a standard that I believe is acceptable. But if that makes it to where the next person won't have to struggle, then I'm fucking here for it.
Yeah, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. And I think that's like a beautiful way to kind of end this too. Where it's like, you know, where it's just like, we're building up to a point where other people don't have to struggle in the ways that we have. And I feel like it's extremely beautiful, especially considering the fact that this whole like podcast is more about people telling their stories, because you never know how there's going to be someone else who's going through what you're going through that needs to hear that to help them get through what they're going through. So,
and I didn't realize how me just being transparent and candid about my life and the things that I do, and because, you know, a lot of people absorb a lot of things, like, and I think I'm just living and doing what I should be doing.
Exactly.
And it's setting a really good example for the next person that's having to deal with this disabled life.
Exactly. And like,
I did everything wrong. Like, I'm like, I can tell you what doesn't fucking work. Like, I am doing the right things now, and I am being a good example, and I am a strong force in our community, but I have not been, like, always. Like, this is, you know, I'm coming up in my 9th year of my injury, and I'm doing so much more and being such an amazing force just within the past year and a half, because I did decide to take my life back. I did decide to dedicate my life to my sobriety and my health and being a good person, and that's come around full circle.
And like, that's the amazing thing about it, right? Right, when you focus on everything, doing things the right way, because you know what the wrong way is. It's like,
I know what the fuck doesn't work. Like, I didn't know what worked, but I knew what didn't.
So, you know,
that was the difficult part about it. And like, I am just learning and doing like everybody else. I just make this shit look a lot easier than it really is. And I have come accustomed to that, and I have to elaborate, and I have to be like, look, not everybody's gonna have it like me, and not everyone's gonna be able to do it like me. And so I want to make it for the people that can't to be able to do so.
No, then that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's what we all should be here for. That's what I'm here for. You know, and I'm glad that that's what you're there for, especially like, because we know how hard it is. You know, it's definitely not easy. So it's always good to have some help. So again, Bentley, thank you so much for coming through. You know, this was a great interview.
Of course, anytime.
You know, I really appreciate it. You know, I gotta do this. You know, to wrap it up. You know, still, you know, smash. You know, spoil master.
I'm a chatter, so you have to tell me, okay, we're done.
Oh no, don't worry about that. It happens. You know, but it's all good. Like, you know, we kind of. I love people who are chatters because it helps the conversation flow more. You know, so. Don't even worry about it.
There's nothing worse than dead air and awkwardness. So I think that's why I'm good at going on to podcasts, because I'll keep on talking and like I'll lead the conversation if it's not going anywhere, which you were great to have a rapport with and everything. So, but yeah.
No, don't worry about it.
I'm equipped for chatting, that's for sure.
I appreciate it. We might have to have you on again after you go viral with your, you know, mermaid suspension.
Yeah, you definitely keep your eyes out for that. Like, I'm really looking forward.
I'm going to be looking out for it. And when I see it, I'm going to let you know. Trust me. All right. Well, you know, we're going to wrap this up for now. And, you know, Bentley, you know, we're going to have to get back to you on a later time, especially like I said about that whole suspension mermaid.
Absolutely.
All right. So, you know, we're just going to wrap this up for now. And, yeah.